All right, here we go. We're doing this. It's Kylie here from Nutritional Revolution. We have for you guys a very special guest. Not the first time on the podcast, but the first time being the guest on the podcast. We have for you guys Amanda Amadal. She is one of our newest Nutritional Revolution practitioners. She's a registered dietitian with an expertise in team sports, and she's worked closely with the University of Delaware soccer and football teams, as well as lacrosse, field hockey, and basketball. And she's passionate about nutrition and research that backs it. So her philosophy is all foods fit, and I am a fan of that, and that everything can be enjoyed in moderation as part of a healthy diet and lifestyle. Amen, sister. Thank you, Amanda, for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I'm excited to be a guest.
Yeah. So we're going to dive into all things team sports, field sports, fueling, what Amanda's experienced. Hopefully you guys can learn some nuggets if you have kids on team sports, or maybe you're on an adult soccer league yourself, learning some little fueling nuggets here yourself. But before we dive into all that, of course, we have to do our two truths and a lie. So go ahead and break those down for us. Amanda knows these well at this point. So.
All right. So I have 2 screws in my knee.
Ooh.
I played on the same travel soccer team for over a decade.
Okay.
And I can make pierogies from scratch.
Wait, what is a pierogi?
It's
it's yummy.
Yeah, Amanda P's like, I know what that is, the bomb.
It's kind of like a Polish ravioli, but it's with like potatoes and cheese, and you can put other like stuff in them depending on your preference.
Oh.
And then they usually get baked with you can bake or fry them. And you can do it with butter and onions and all that yummy good stuff.
So it's kind of like a tortellini or different?
Kind of like, I guess the closest thing I'd equate it to is like a ravioli, because it's got the dough on the outside and then the filling on the inside.
Is it crispy or is it like pasta-y, like on the outside?
Either way. So if you like boil or bake them, then they'll be a little bit softer, but you can also pan fry them and get them nice and crispy.
Do you guys see what I just did there? I totally picked her brain, and I now feel like that is not the lie. So, not intentional, but I think I just solved one of them. Okay. So I feel like you can definitely make pierogies. I'm going to go with that one. I'm going to say, I don't know, there could be some things in here, like maybe you only have 1 screw in your knee, or maybe you played on the travel soccer team for 7 years and not a decade. What do you think, Amanda P?
I don't know. The other 2 are so plausible. I'm going to go with 2 screws in the knee.
I think I'm going to follow you on that one. But don't tell us, of course, as you know, we'll reveal the answer at the end for the listeners. So we gave a little bit about your background, your education, but give us some way background info on what kind of got you into sports nutrition, what got you excited about that career path.
Yeah. So I did grow up playing soccer. I won't say how long, but I ended up having a knee surgery my junior year of high school, which is why I'm glad we did the 2 truths and a lie first, because we're going right into it. But so I had a knee surgery junior year of high school. And as I was trying to get back, on the field and playing and trying to get my muscle mass up so that way I could, rejoin my teams, I kind of started paying attention more so to like the correlation between what I was eating the night before, the morning of, and how I felt during my lifts, during my physical therapy, through all of that. And like the more I kind of delved into that and did like my own research, because I was 16, 17 at the time, the more of a difference I saw. And so I was originally a pre-vet when I was in college, but kind of decided that wasn't the direction I wanted to go. So when I was pivoting into seeing what I wanted to do next, I kind of reflected on that and realized that that's something that, had sparked my interest at the time, like 2 or 3 years prior. So that was the direction I went. I went into dietetics knowing fully that I wanted to be in sports, and wanted to help people get back onto the field, onto the court, back into playing, post injury, or just improve themselves in general.
And you have a double master's, right?
I do.
Yeah, she does. She's got the brains. Tell us about the double masters.
So the first one is just nutrition dietetics. It was paired with my dietetic internship. So all the supervised practice hours that we have to get before we can sit for the registration exam. But I had always intended on going to this school specifically for the sports nutrition exercise science masters that they offered. So, once I completed the MSDI, I knew I was like, this is what I came here for. I'm not going to leave without it. So I stuck around for an extra year. My advisor was amazing. He managed to pull strings, get me in the classes I needed. And I got the second master's in sports nutrition and exercise science.
Nice. That's awesome. And let's see, with the post masters, that's when you became was it a fellow, you said?
Yes. Okay. Yep. I had a fellowship.
And that was with some sports. Did you get exposure to some of the sports teams there during the fellowship, or was that more so during your internship, or sorry, the dietetic internship masters?
So during my dietetic internship, the end of it was supposed to be our choice rotation. And I had lined up to work with a professional team, and was super, super excited about it, but wasn't going to tell my mom because it was her favorite team, until there was pen on paper, and it was definitely, I was a go. And unfortunately with COVID, I got pulled from being on site right when I was finishing up my acute care rotation.
Oh, shoot.
So that was about March, and I was supposed to be with that team in like the end of April. So wow. That didn't end up happening, unfortunately. So that's part of the reason I went into the fellowship, was to get that experience while I can still learn from somebody who's an expert, and get my feet wet and like learn from them.
Awesome. And so you worked with a variety of team sports. Did you have a sport that kind of drew you in more, that you kind of got more excited to work with, or was fun to work with?
Yeah. So, I mean, I obviously like playing soccer. That was one of my favorite teams to work with, but working with the football team during preseason too, like it was really, really long days where we were getting there at 5 a.m. and we were leaving until like 5:30 in the evening. But it was so fun. It was so worth it. The guys were like always cracking jokes and having fun, and it was just a really fun environment to be in, where we were all putting in those hours. We were all there committed to, getting them ready for the season. And they actually ended up doing really, really well, which was exciting to watch too.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And so with the like team sports, is there a common maybe question you were seeing get asked regarding sports nutrition, or maybe like almost like a myth that they were like being exposed to, whether it be with like social media or any of that stuff that you noticed often?
I feel like a big thing is that they always think that they're eating enough when they're not. I feel like a lot of times we did see underfueling versus maybe overfueling. And it was just because I don't think they realized how much like they were putting in, and with classes and their different, other time commitments, it was hard for them to get all of the fuel that they needed throughout the day. So one of the things that we really worked on was finding ways to, get those snacks in throughout the day, something they could throw in their backpack, eat as they're walking to class. Finding ways for them to get to the dining hall. We actually ended up extending hours in the student athlete kitchen to kind of accommodate those. And one of the last things I was working on before the fellowship ended was getting breakfast set up for them. So when they came out of morning lift, they could grab something, and that way they'd have that as they're going to class.
That's awesome. Yeah. I think with the collegiate sports, and goodness, even at the pro level, some of them aren't even at that point. Right. And so I think it's so important to be able to find that and assess that. And were some of them, did you do, I imagine, like a diet analysis or dietary recall to like determine they were underfueling, or were they just reporting like fatigue and that kind of stuff?
So a lot of times it was that they would either refer themselves, like self-refer, or like a coach or a strength coach would refer. And it was always performance-based. Like, hey, we noticed that, you're not able to go as hard, you're not doing as well as normally. Maybe it'd be a good idea to, talk to one of the dietitians. And And so then we'd go through what a normal day would look like, depending on if it was like, so if lift was Tuesday, Thursday morning, but then Wednesday, Monday, Wednesday, they had practice in the evening. We'd kind of go through like those different style days, depending on, because it was like a repeating schedule in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd go through one of each of those, see what they're normally eating that day, and then kind of guide them towards where they think they could improve, because it's going to be a lot more effective if they kind of come to that conclusion themselves and we're just telling them.
Yeah.
So one of the things like, is there any point in the day where you feel hungry?
Mm-hmm.
Is like, how much are you eating at these days? Like, this is what you're eating, but how much are you eating of these things? Where do you see areas that you can improve? And then we kind of would meet them where they were and help them along with, our suggestions of what we felt like could be good ideas to work on.
That's almost like a little bit of like motivational interviewing questions, kind of. Yeah,
yep, exactly.
A very effective tool to have in your pocket for sure. And you mentioned kind of performance-based indicators. What are some things for like our listeners, if they are maybe have a child on a team sport, or are themselves on a team sport? What are some signs of potentially inadequate nutrition to support their performance they might notice?
Yeah. So, I guess the most minor ones would be fatigue and cramping, like muscle cramping. But as it gets to be worse and like more detrimental, you'd start to see more of those stress fractures and like different pains that they're feeling either when they're performing or when they're not.
Nice. Yeah. And with our female athletes, would anything be different?
Yeah, if they're, start losing their cycle or like losing exceptional amounts of weight, I think that usually see that more so in female athletes, just because I feel like because male athletes, they have the ability to carry more muscle. So they might not notice as much of a difference because it would be like it's harder for them to lose that muscle, like that bulky muscle. The girls don't carry as much bulky muscle.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like too, college kids have so much energy. I don't know. They can get away with a lot and not realize it. It's one, who knows, maybe that's from all the like whatever Monster energy drinks or Red Bulls or whatever they're drinking. But I remember I didn't drink that stuff, and I definitely had more energy back in the day.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I was drinking espresso like it was regular coffee.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Okay. So we have some things that we know we should be looking for if we are noticing the cramping, the general fatigue, or maybe someone is regularly getting sick or that injury kind of keeps popping back up. What are some things that maybe they should prioritize or think about maybe before and during like practices or after practice?
Yeah. So, I mean, of course they know their bodies. They kind of know when something feels off, and they are capable of doing their own research, but I would always recommend talking to somebody who is an expert, can kind of narrow in on what they exactly are missing, whether it's, they're not getting enough calcium, they need some vitamin D, whether they're low on protein, they need to increase their carbs around training. They might be able to figure some of that out on their own, but it would definitely be helpful to reach out to somebody and, schedule that conversation so that way they can have that external help from an expert.
Yeah. Awesome. And kind of circling into or back to the little bit of the misconception stuff, what are some of the things or misconceptions you've heard with regards to just like fueling, like mid-game, during a game, halftime, that kind of stuff? What are some things you see or misconceptions about that?
So, I mean, we all know the classic orange slices at halftime, and that's great because it's got a lot of that juice that's going to give you that quick energy. But there are certain fruits that are going to have a higher fiber content that could be a little bit harder on the gut, especially with, blood flow being increased to the muscles, your stomach's not getting as much of it, your digestive system isn't working at full capacity when you're exercising. So, anything that you might be comfortable eating, before practice, let's say, that would be helpful, might not be the best thing mid-practice or mid-game. And then that's kind of rolls into where like the simple sugars are, the worst of the worst in terms of labeling food as bad, but they have their time and place. Like fruit juice is a great way to get like that quick energy in mid practice, but also if you're under fueling, if you're not getting enough carbs even throughout the day, that's something that's really easy and takes up very little gut space during even a meal to add in to make sure that you're meeting your like what you're meeting your needs.
That's awesome. I like that. So kind of common misconception, you're like, and I've seen this, I think too, what I'm about to ask you, but with sports nutrition is like, it's maybe a surprise to a lot of people that you can utilize fruit juice or sports nutrition products, bagels, like things like that in and around.
Even in Rice Krispies, I've had athletes be like, that's their go-to. And that's something that people think of as like, oh, that's like a junk food snack, but it's not. It can be, if it's used properly, like there's no reason why it can't be useful.
Yeah. I have seen much of the same thing too. And I remember, I don't know, I think when I was going through my undergrad, like that was something that I got really excited about because I was like, oh my goodness, like what, like we can eat these things. And like, there is a time and a place for it. And I think that's really neat. And I think that can maybe like help ease a lot of people's maybe stress, around some of these things. Like I have clients that they just like really want to have, oh goodness, maybe it's a Rice Krispie or whatever, but they have it, before bed. And I'm like, dude, time that thing post run in the morning. Like that's a great time, to have it for some glycogen replenishment, or pre. So yeah, there is a time and a place for these other foods that maybe are quote unquote looked at as unhealthy, from kind of like Gen Pop perspective, that can be really effective at providing quick energy and utilized, without causing like GI distress. So I think that is a helpful tip. What are you mentioned orange slices, juice, any other recommendations for mid game? Is it a salad with chicken or?
For mid game? No. Mid game, I'd say like fruit snacks. Our football players love the Juicy Bursts where it's like a fruit snack meets a gusher.
Oh, cool.
Loved them. We could not keep them in stock. I swear they were hoarding them. Those we would do apple sauces. We could do like Gatorade is even good, even if you don't want to like drink it necessarily. I know I like as an athlete when I was still playing soccer, if my Gatorade wasn't ice cold, I could not get it down. But that's where even just like swishing it around in your mouth and then like spitting it out, if you really, really can't stomach it, even that will be helpful. Like it's something that's helpful. It'll give you even just a little bit. But yeah, there's always options for things that if you can't tolerate certain things, there's always other options, even if it's a sports gel or a honey stinger waffle or things like that. Like there's things that are made for it, but there's also other things that you can just find in the grocery store that are going to be a little less expensive, that are going to be just as effective.
Yeah. That's awesome. And kind of around the nutrition and cooking, I know that you love cooking yourself, and I think I've even done some cooking demos. So my question for you is, what are some of your go-to meals for pre-game, and or post-game? And if you have recipes, we can link them for the listeners. But no pressure. So what would some of those be?
So for the cooking demos we did, these were really fun recipes that we found. So I wanted to like add those in, but we did with the soccer team, we did like a chicken and shrimp taco with mango salsa. And then we did like a side of rice with that. And then one of the other ones we did was a Hawaiian barbecue chicken wrap where it was pineapple and red onion and lettuce and tomato. And it actually came out really, really good.
That sounds delicious.
It was so good. I wish I still had the recipe.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Sure, we can Google one.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So pregame, I think first and foremost, the rule is nothing new on game day. Make sure it's something that you know that you can tolerate, and make sure that it's far enough out if you are including some protein in it. So about 2 to 3 hours is usually my sweet spot, and I would do either like a veggie egg omelet with toast or peanut butter and banana on a bagel.
Nice. And what I think the peanut butter and banana on a bagel can work for sure. I'm kind of thinking too, maybe of also like high school athletes, not a huge coordination going on with like a nutrition department. They're traveling maybe with their parents, or, you know, and the spot to go to is like the Burger Shack or Wendy's, or, you know, there's just a lot of fast food stuff in the area. Trying to stick to something that's quote unquote like nothing new on race day. What would you encourage for that type of athlete?
So that's one of the nice things about like the bagels, that stuff is, it doesn't have to be refrigerated. You could take it with you in the car. Do what you like, could make it ahead of time, even wrap it up in a bag, like a Ziploc, and take it with you. But in terms of if you're stopping somewhere along the way, if you know where you are ahead of, like where you're going ahead of time, or even just knowing what like local chains are, like plan that out ahead of time, play around with it, like stop by a Dunkin', grab what you think you'd like, eat that, give it an hour or two, go and do your training session. And you can kind of get a feel for it, let your body get used to that. And I think that would definitely be helpful.
Yeah. Awesome.
To try,
I have to say,
train that.
Yeah. And two, I think, like Chipotle nowadays, like I feel like you can navigate pretty well and like find things that work from a pre-game perspective and like modify things, you know, in a way that works. Okay. So you've done some cooking demos, got some good recipes that sound delicious. We're going to have to figure those out. And then we are heading into summer, or we're in summer. What are some things that maybe team sport athletes that do practice or train or compete, or have games in the summer, how should they potentially consider adjusting maybe their fueling tactics, and or hydration as the weather warms up like this?
Yeah. So hydration is huge. I usually recommend 20 ounces per pound that you lose during a training session. So that's, you know, hop on the scale beforehand, do your thing, hop on afterwards, whatever that difference is. You want to make sure you're like, I recommend it's 20 ounces per pound that you've lost. And then you're going to want to make sure you're salting your foods at a minimum, just so your body can help retain that. But the summer has such great produce that's in season that it's so easy to take advantage of, whether it's, you know, berries and cherries, corn, cucumbers, tomatoes, peppers. You want to get that rainbow in with your meals throughout the day, because that's going to help get you a bunch of different vitamins and minerals, get your antioxidants in, anti-inflammatories. You know, as you're training, your muscles do get inflamed just as part of the natural order of things. So a lot of those colorful things are going to help to reduce that inflammation and get you ready to go for the next training session. Same with your carbs and your protein. Your protein are going to help, you know, stimulate muscle synthesis. You want to spread that out throughout the day, try to trigger that as much as possible. And also try to avoid, you know, the muscle full effect is what I've called it. I think that's a regularized term.
Cool. I like it.
But it's that your body can't utilize more than about like 2 servings of protein at a time. So it, like, anything more than that isn't doing your body any more good. It'd be better to take that extra protein that you might have at one meal and spread it out, whether it's another snack or another meal. And the more that you hit that goal throughout the day, the more times throughout the day that your muscle growth is going to be stimulated. Other than that, it's going to be timing. It's going to really be like timing your carb intake and your protein intake around your training sessions, honoring your hunger and fullness cues. If you're hungry, eat, especially if it's like late at night. A lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to eat before bed, but getting in a good like protein snack there is going to help then your muscles, you know, work and on growing overnight too, especially if it's something with casein like cottage cheese, which I know is a weird texture thing for some people, but like that's a great snack to have before bed, because that's gonna like a long digesting protein that your body's gonna be able to utilize throughout the night while you're sleeping.
Yeah.
And then same with healthy fats. I know that one of those, like, I guess gen pop trends that people are like buy into is that like they should be eating low fat, but you're like, those high impact fats are so important. They make up your cell membranes, they contain those fat soluble vitamins, they regulate and like help with production of your hormones and your immune function, your body temperature, protecting your vital organs. Like it's all so important, not just for like sport performance, but for like living.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So.
That's key. I like the recommendations there too, that you mentioned, kind of jumping back to like the sports nutrition food and real food options too, that people can use as a recovery tactic. Okay. So we learned about how we should adjust or consider some fueling options. They doesn't have to be a salad with chicken on it mid-game. Nobody's doing that. You can utilize additional fuel sources, whether it be liquid or some solids. You can do things like real food. Applesauce is straight from a real food. Or if you want to utilize something like a Rice Krispie treat, they're both going to get similar effects. So like, as Amanda said, test it, nothing new on game day. I think that's same thing we will apply to all our endurance athletes as well. Nothing new on race day is the same language we will use with our athletes. So stick with something, you've tested at that level of intensity. Right? So I think we're going to tie it up there. We do have a handout, if anybody's interested, that Amanda created on fueling for the athlete mid-game and some tips why it's important, what's going on with the body at that time. So we will link that in the show notes below. And then where can people find you, Amanda?
Yeah, so I have more information on my bio and everything like that on the Nutritional Revolution website. And from there, you can always book a 15-minute comp call with me to kind of, get a better feel for what I'm about, but also then I can get a better feel for what you're looking for and what you're looking to get out of, us working together. And then my LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, we will link those in the show notes below for anyone interested. And then thank you again so much for your time today, Amanda. This is awesome.
Thank you guys for having me.
Wait, we didn't do Two Truths and a Lie. Okay.
Very important.
Yeah. Okay. So we did not do Two Truths and a Lie reveal. Okay. We'll circle back to that. So sorry for our listeners. I thought I was going to leave you there. Okay. So Amanda possibly has 2 screws in her knee. She played on a travel soccer team for a decade. And that she can make pierogi, which Amanda P and I think she does not have 2 screws in her knee, but after you told us your background, I think maybe you do have 2 screws in your knee. So which one was the lie?
So you guys were right. It was that I have 2 screws in my knee. I had 2 screws in my knee, but I had a second surgery to get them out because they were pushing out on their own already.
Oh, wait. So you got them removed at this point? Or
I did get them removed.
Oh, whoa. So what did you break a bone, or was it a tear, or what happened?
So I actually hadn't torn anything. I was fortunate that my travel soccer coach was an athletic trainer. So he had us doing like ACL prevention, like all of that growing up, like as from the age of probably 8 or 9.
Wow. That's awesome.
So we were doing all those things to make sure, because he was like, if I can help it, my girls are not tearing their ACL. So I was running sprints actually at lacrosse practice.
Oh.
I went to pivot and the bottom half of my leg stayed facing forward. The rest of me turned.
Oh, ouch.
So they thought I had just sprained my MCL and had a bone bruise, but for 6 months, every time I went full extension, my kneecap would slide out and back in.
Yeah,
ouch. It wasn't. They could not figure out what was wrong. I was doing everything in terms of physical therapy and like weight training that I was supposed to be doing. So they kind of just said, we're going to put everything on the list that could be wrong and we'll figure it out when we get in there. So the first thing they did was realign my patella tendon, which to do that, they had to cut the bone, switch the pieces, screw it back in place.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
But they ended up going in then like orthoscopically through the top part of my knee, because that's like a little bit, that's probably at the top of my shin bone, it looks like. But
wow,
they found out that I had chipped off cartilage that was under my kneecap. That was sitting right in the groove where my kneecap was supposed to track. So that's why my kneecap wouldn't track right. It kept popping out. And that's why they also couldn't see it on anything, because my kneecap was blocking it when they were taking imaging.
Wow.
I've actually heard of that happening like to a lot of people. I've heard that like similar, with the cartilage. Oh man.
Yeah. It was not a fun time. because that was basically a broken bone. Then it ended up being, I was on crutches from mid-November was when my surgery was through New Year's.
Oh man, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, glad it's all good now and your kneecap's not jumping all over the place. That's not fun.
Yeah, no, definitely not. And that's how I got into lifting in the first place too. So
Nice.
I mean, I gained a hobby.
Yeah, there you go. Learn some new skills out of it and got a hobby. Yeah. Awesome. So so you are a serious pierogi baker, it sounds like, or maker.
I learned from my fiance's aunt, where we had moved away, we weren't in the area anymore, and we were talking about how we really, really wanted pierogies for like Thanksgiving or whatever it was, whatever holiday was coming up. And so she sent me, you know, detailed instructions and recipes. And I made so many because I didn't think to cut it down from what she sent it, because she makes it for the holidays.
Oh.
I made so many pierogies. I think I was standing in my kitchen for like 8 hours getting the dough ready and doing the filling and boiling potatoes, and then I had to cut them and roll them and stuff them and boil them.
Wow.
It was a process.
Goodness.
But I did it, and I know that I can now.
Yeah,
can you like
expert?
Yeah, can you like freezer those and like eat them for the rest of the year or something?
Absolutely. I think I ended up bringing some to my parents.
Nice. That's awesome. Pierogies. That sounds amazing. All right. Well, now we're all at the end of our podcast episode today. We found out Amanda's two truths and a lie. So hopefully you guys hung on to figure that one out and hear her stories about her knee. And thank you again so much, Amanda, for joining us. And again, we will include those links to learn more about Amanda if you want to check out her bio, her education history, and her 15-minute complimentary call link if you guys want to hop on a session with her to see how she can help you, let her learn a little bit more about you and what's going on, your goals, etc. And she can give you an idea of a game plan that you guys could work through together. So thank you again, Amanda.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.